All right, hey people. Today is June 7th, 2024. I'm Chris Lucas. This is my show, The Protestant View. I'm going to try and keep this video under an hour, hopefully under a half hour. I basically just want to, I'm just going to go over real quickly with the text and something real simple to point out that Seventh-day Adventists are getting wrong. And when you interact with them, you're going to be a little confused if you're not super studied on the book of Daniel. And if you're not aware of things that they try to do while they're trying to explain their interpretation. And it gets very convoluted because what they try to do is link Daniel 8 to Daniel 9 in some weird, odd way where they try to say because there's some certain Hebrew word for vision, and that same Hebrew word shows up in Daniel 9, it must be the same exact vision, and arguments like that. And they say that's the only way you can figure out when the time period starts. And we know since Daniel 9 starts with the decree, that's how you figure out when Daniel 8 starts, right? Because they talk about the decree of the going forth to rebuild the temple and restore Jerusalem in Daniel 9, right? And we know that's when the 77s, or some people call it the 70 weeks of Daniel, starts, which is about 490 years. So, and what the 70 Adventists do is they say, okay, that starts in 457, it ends in 34 AD. And like about 3 years before it ends, Jesus is crucified. And I generally agree with that about Daniel 9. But but the problem I have with them is that they try to say that both these prophecies are connected together. And I'm going to show you real quickly that they're not connected, and that they lack reading comprehension, and I think they lack understanding about history. And they might not know that, because how many people, if you walk into a church and if you say, hey, when did Alexander the Great die? How many people would be able to tell you 324 BC, right? When did Alexander the Great conquer Media Persia? Oh, that was about 334 BC. People generally, if you walk into the average church, they're not going to tell you that. The average person on the street's not going to tell you that. So when you're looking at a Bible prophecy and it's speaking about these things need to happen, and if you don't know history on top of it, you're going to be a little confused. And then when someone's jumping all over the place, coming up with all these like crazy ideas of how to interpret it, you get really lost, and then your time just gets wasted. So what I'm trying to do is show people this is how not to have your time wasted, okay? And so just real simple, I'm going to basically, this video is going to be for probably people a little bit more acquainted to their arguments in this prophecy. But I'm going to show you real quickly why they are wrong. I invite any SDA to make a video about this if you want to respond, and I'll be glad to let people know you made a video about it, okay? And you can post it in the comment section of this video, and I'll make sure to talk about it and tell people about it. So then you get free publicity too, right? But it better address this point, okay? And I'm going to show you that I don't think you can. So I'm just going to read this prophecy real quick and just go down to verse 14, because that's all we need to do. We don't need to go anywhere else. So in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously, which would have been in chapter 7, right? I looked in the vision, and while I was looking, I was in the cathedral of Susa, which is in the province of Elam, and I looked in the vision, and I myself was beside the Ulai canal. Then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram had 2 horns and was standing in front of the canal. Now the 2 horns were long, but one was longer than the other, with the longer one coming up last. I saw the ram butting westward, northward, southward, and no other beast could stand against him, nor was there anyone to rescue him from his power. But he did as he pleased and made himself great. So that was just talking about the ram, which if you read down further, it tells you what each of these beasts are, right? It's going to tell you that the ram is Media Persia. It's going to tell you that the goat, which is what we're about ready to talk about now, they're going to tell you that's the Grecian Empire. While I was observing, behold, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of the entire earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a prominent horn between his eyes. He came up to the ram that had the two horns, which I had seen standing in front of the canal, and rushed at him with his mighty wrath. And I saw him come up beside the ram, and he was enraged at him. And he struck the ram and smashed his two horns, and the ram had no strength to withstand him. So he hurled him to the ground and trampled on him, and there was no one to rescue the ram from his power. Then the male goat made himself exceedingly great, but once he became powerful, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 prominent horns came up towards the 4 winds of heaven. So now we have if you read down, I'm trying to make this video brief, but if you were to read down, we see that this goat is Greece and it's conquering Media Persia. And we know through history, and even Seventh-day Adventists will agree with me, that Alexander was this large horn on that goat, okay? And now it's broken. Okay, so if we look up history, we're going to know that Alexander died in 334 BC. But in fact, you know what? I should probably pull it up on the screen because I think what people are going to wind up doing is getting real stuck because it's like, oh, who are you telling us these facts? So let's verify this. When did Alexander the Great die? I'm sorry, but I already know from doing so many of these videos how it's gonna be.
Alexander the Great passed away between the evening of June 10th and the evening of June 11th, 323 BC in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar II in Babylon at the age of 32. His death has been a subject of historical debate, with various theories proposed regarding the cause and circumstances of his demise.
That's all we basically need to know. Verification, right? I'm not going to go through a bunch of history books. We're keeping this brief. So now we know this large horn was Alexander the Great, and you can go look in the writings of Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, and it will show the Jews bringing this prophecy of Daniel to Alexander the Great and showing him that he's the prophesied person that's going to do all this, right? And that's what gave Alexander. That's why Alexander the Great gave favor to the Jews because of this and had respect for them. So anyway, now we get to the little horn. So this is a key area right here. But keep in mind, we know 324 BC. So all this has to happen after 324 BC, bare minimum, right? So anyway, and out of one of them came a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the beautiful land. It grew up to the heavenly lights, and some of the lights, that is, some of the stars, it threw down to the earth and trampled them. It even exalted itself to be equal with the commander of the army, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him. And the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And because of an offense, the army will be given to the horn along with the regular sacrifice, and it will hurl the truth to the ground and do so as it pleases and be successful. Now here's the key question here. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply when the offense causes horror, so as to allow both the sanctuary and the army to be trampled? And he said unto me, 2,300 evening mornings, then the sanctuary will be properly restored. So this question right here in verse 13, what is this question asking? Is it asking anything prior to the little horn? And I would say almost everyone with any kind of reading comprehension would say no. So therefore, why would you even start this prophecy? Why would you look for an event before 324 BC? Because it's only asking about things that happen after the large horn is broken, right? So if it's only asking about, there's nothing in that question that's asking one single thing about anything that happens before that large horn's broken. So this is just reading comprehension 101. Now, if I sent my child to a school and like let's say they were reading this and the teacher just asked a question. It's like, okay, class, I want you to okay, Henry, over there. Henry, sweetie, do you mind telling us, answering this question for us? Now, this question in verse 13, does it refer to something that happens before the large horn is broken or after? Now, if the teacher goes and tells my kid, and like, let's say my kid goes, oh, it's after. And my kid's sitting there, look, feeling all proud and good. Oh, I got this. I know I got this right. And that teacher goes, no, are you nuts? Um, Henry, why would you possibly think this question is about something how would you possibly read this question, Henry, and not know it applies to something that happens before that? You know what? I would beat that teacher up because I'd be like, that's a child abuse. That's like trying to teach a kid, like a kid goes to school to learn math and the kid thinks he's getting his math right. 2 + 2 = 4. Teacher tells him 7. I would feel like beating that teacher, right? That's abuse, right? Like you don't like this is just reading comprehension, right? So this is why I'm pretty adamant about this because if I was reading anything else, like a story, like let's say I'm reading a story about a guy who has a vision and he goes, the other day I saw a vision. A flaming bird was terrifying a desert land. Then I saw a camel shooting water out of its mouth in a rage. And the bird lost its fire and was scared and hid. The bird had 3 children and then died during the great splitting of the earth. Only one of the 3 birds gave birth to offspring, and one of these offspring grew large and exacted revenge on the offspring of the camel by attacking their food supply and water. Then I heard an angel say, but for how long will this happen? And then the other angel said, for 100 days, and then it will stop. And let's say someone goes, and I go, okay, so when will this event happen where this offspring of this bird goes and exacts revenge? You would say, well, it was after the great splitting of the earth because that's when that offspring was born. And if we could date the great splitting of the earth, you would know, okay, it's got to happen after that period of time. And anyone would answer that question, right? So if this was like a story, you would answer that question that way. Why is it that suddenly when it's this text, suddenly, oh no, reading comprehension goes out the roof? Oh, because this little girl, is telling you she's a prophet and has a vision and all this other stuff to confirm it, right? But simple reading comprehension, what the Seventh-day Adventist Church needs to do and quit messing with people who are like new and who aren't very educated and they go to you looking to understand. And this kind of applies to other Bible teachers because I've seen other people do things with various prophecies. But it's like, stop messing with people. Okay, this is a real simple prophecy, and if you got a good argument as to why I should think that this refers to anything that happens before 324 BC when the large horn is broken, let me know. Make the video. and explain it so we can all see why our reading comprehension is off. You do not need to go to Daniel 9. It tells you when this is going to it tells you how long this event's going to happen. So we got to look for these things happening. And it's like, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another one said to that particular one was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply while the offense causes horror, so that both the sanctuary and the army to be trampled? Now that word army, it's just like the people. We can go to a different translation real quick. Let me use the Berean, and I'll kind of read it from the Berean. It says, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to him, how long until the fulfillment of the vision of the daily sacrifice and the rebellion that causes desolation and the surrender of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled? Okay. So when it's asking these questions, it's like, okay, the fulfillment of the vision, and it tells you the vision of the daily, and someone will say, oh, well, the sacrifice isn't in the original. Okay, but we know daily is the continual, the regular. This is called the ha-tamid. It's ha-tamid and all the other passages that refer to the sacrifice. So we kind of know it is, even though, yes, the actual Hebrew word for sacrifice isn't there, but we know ha-tamid, the daily, is what it's normally called, right? So anyway, how long till the fulfillment of the vision of the daily sacrifice of rebellion that causes desolation? So right here, what part, the daily sacrifice, was that mentioned before verse 9? No. Okay. The rebellion that causes desolation, was that mentioned before verse 9? No. And the surrender of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled, were those two things mentioned before verse 9? No. So we don't need to look before, and we clearly can see just by reading this simple reading comprehension that this starts after 324 BC. So, and it says the vision of this, right, of these things right here. It's telling you the vision of what? Of the daily, of the rebellion that causes desolation, and of the surrender that causes the sanctuary and host to be trampled. That vision right there, that part. And it says, how long will this take? These things take right here. It will take 2,300 evening mornings, and then the sanctuary will be properly restored. Now, when I read Exodus 28, Numbers 29, and Ezra 3, it's referring to these evening and mornings as sacrifices, because there's an Erev in the evening and a Boker in the morning, and these sacrifices are given daily. This is part of the daily sacrifice, right? Because even in verse 11, it magnified itself even to the prince of the host. It removed his daily sacrifice. It removed his ha-tamid and overthrew the place of a sanctuary. It removed his regular or his continual. Those are two other ways you can say it in English, right? So we know this is relating to the sanctuary. And when you get down to the bottom here, it doubles down, because it says the vision of the evening and morning that has been spoken is true. Now you must seal up the vision, for it concerns a distant future. And I am curious about one thing. Interlinear Daniel 8. It's a minor point, but I am curious whether verse 26 is in plural or not. Yeah, okay, so they got mornings and evenings, but it's actually ha-Areb and ha-Boker. Kind of wish I knew why that was added to there. But it says, in the vision of the evening and mornings, which was told is true. So that's the particular vision that it's talking about. And there's just no reason to think this applies. Like, we don't need any other part of the Bible. Now, you can say, okay, we could use it other parts like Daniel 11, because it goes into further detail about what transpires from the Greek kingdom, all the way to the persecution of Antiochus, which starts about verse 3 of Daniel 11 and verse 36 or 35 of Daniel 11, right? Like that time period is this whole Greek Hellenistic period. And so you can use that to confirm things you thought about and ideals, right? You can use that to help confirm. So I'm not saying you cannot use other pieces, right, to confirm something, but you don't need them to set a date, right? You can maybe use it to narrow it down and figure out if you got the right thing, but you don't need them to set the date. There's no reason for it, because in this vision, Daniel 9 has not even happened yet. So these two angels, they're only discussing of what they have just seen. So when they're given that, they're only telling you it will take 2,300 evening mornings, then the sanctuary will be restored, right? And another problem I have with this is if you try to say this little horn is Rome, okay, it doesn't make sense to say Rome did this stuff in 457 BC, because now it's, okay, the Seventh-day Adventists basically believe it's the decree that we read in Ezra chapter 7 that is where this prophecy starts, and they believe that decree was given in 457 BC. I believe it was given in either in 457 or 458. I don't have too much of an issue of when that decree is given, but let's see if that decree matches this what's going on here: the daily sacrifice, the rebellion that causes desolation, and the surrender of the sanctuary to be trampled. Let's see if when we read Ezra 7, are we seeing that sanctuary being trampled? Let's see. I'll go with the Berean. So we're going to read this. Let's see if we see a trampling. Do we see Rome destroying in Jerusalem, the sanctuary, or anything in Ezra 7? Well, let's read and find out, because that's what they keep saying. Many years later, during the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra, son of Sariah, and the son of Azariah, and the son of Hilkiah, and the son of Shalom, and the son of Zadok, and the son of Ahitub. I'm going to skip some of this because I don't need to read this part. We just know that all this. So in the 7th year of the king of Artaxerxes, he went up to Jerusalem with some of the Israelites, priests, Levites, singers, gatekeepers, and temple servants. Ezra arrived in Jerusalem in the 5th month of the 7th year of the king. He had begun the journey from Babylon on the 1st day of the 1st month, and he arrived in Jerusalem on the 1st day of the 5th month, for the gracious hand of God was upon him. For Ezra had set in his heart to study the law of God and to practice it and teach its statutes and ordinances in Israel. This is the text of the letter of King Artaxerxes had given to Ezra, the priest and the scribe, and an expert in the commandments and statutes of the Lord, to Israel. Artaxerxes, king of kings, to Ezra the priest, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven. So this is Artaxerxes, and so far I don't see a persecution. I don't see a trampling. As 17 Adventists, please, if you see it, I just don't. But anyway, I hereby decree that any volunteers among the Israelites in my kingdom, including the priests and Levites, may go up with you to Jerusalem. You are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to evaluate Judah and Jerusalem according to the law of your God, which is in your hand. Moreover, you are to take with you silver and gold that the king and his counselors have freely offered to God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem. Together with all the silver and gold, you may find all the province of Babylon, as well as the freewill offerings of the people and the priests to the house of God in Jerusalem. With this money, therefore, you are to buy many bulls, rams, lambs as you needed, together with their grain offerings and drink offerings, and offer them on the altar at the house of your God in Jerusalem. You and your brothers may do whatever seems best with the rest of the silver and gold according to according to the will of your God. You must deliver to the God of Jerusalem all the articles given to you for the service of the house of your God. And if anything else is needed for the house of your God that you may have occasion to supply, you may pay for it from the royal treasury. Whoa, 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 whoa. You mean this King Artaxerxes is giving the Jews money out of his royal treasury? What's going on here? I thought Seventh-day Adventists said this is when the trampling starts. This is when the 457, this is when the 2,300 so-called years starts. But does that really fit this verse? Like, to me, these people have a very ignorant reading comprehension, because they will even say that's the decree. But does this contradict what we see in verse 13? And then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to him, how long until the fulfillment of the vision of the daily sacrifice, the rebellion that causes desolation, and the surrender of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled? And said to me 2,300 evening more. So obviously a trampling needs to start, or the surrender of the sanctuary. But this is going to God. But when you read all the details from verse 9 through 12, where do we see that going on at in Ezra 7? We don't see it. So these people are out of their minds. They're actually doing the thing that God forbids you to do, which is called good evil and evil good. This is not a trampling. This is not a defilement that we're reading in Ezra 7. But here's these wicked Seventh-day Adventists saying, no, it is happening, but it's not happening. We can see it with our eyes. We can read this Bible with basic reading comprehension, and we know we don't see this. Then you just add it to the fact that we know this event definitely comes after the large horn is broken, which we know was definitely around 324 BC. So it can't be. How can you? What does it? Does the little horn go back in time? Does Rome travel back in time? Because they keep saying this is Rome. Does Rome travel back in time? And does Rome get in this a DeLorean? And then but now they went back in time, and they're defiling the temple. What's going on here? And then it's just like they have this other weird thing going on where it's like, how many times do we see sanctuary mentioned in this from Daniel 9 through Daniel verse 12? So Daniel 8 verses 9 through 12. We only see the word sanctuary one time in these verses. So why would you think this has something to do with two different sanctuaries? Because in this verse 13, and in this verse 14, they'll say this has to do with the heavenly sanctuary being restored. How's the heavenly sanctuary restored? If this is, I only see one sanctuary, right? But they'll say, well, Rome destroyed the earthly sanctuary. Okay, so are you saying Rome destroyed the earthly sanctuary in here? Do you see how many problems they have? They're trying to have two sanctuaries in here when it's only mentioned one time. It reminds me of the way some people take Daniel 9 and say it's about a future antichrist. And they see another temple being built. But wait a minute. We only see Jerusalem restored and rebuilt one time. We see it destroyed one time, and we never see it rebuilt again. So why would you think there's another temple in there? So same thing here, but there's no mention of us even a second sanctuary. There's no allusion to it. So it's either one or the other. It's either the heavenly or the earthly. And then so the question would be, well, if it's heavenly, how's Rome getting up into heaven and trampling everything, or the papacy, or whatever they want to say? And then they try to say it's kind of two. It's like Rome/papacy. Okay, so whatever you want to say, how does it? But also think about this. It's like when does it get? When is it trampled, or when is it defiled, right? And then when is it restored? And it's like they really like. Okay, so you're telling me the heavenly sanctuary just got defiled in 457? They'll be like. And they'll get real confusing, because you watched me try to ask this Seventh-day Adventist for almost 4 hours, and he runs from the question, right? This guy I had on my show called Prima Scriptura just ran from these such questions, because you know what? He knows he can't make sense of it. Um, there's a few more points. One thing I noticed, when I talk to Seventh-day Adventists, is they're a little bit. I think they're one of the most extreme um, replacement theologists, because it's almost like they're trying to replace the Jews, and by making them seem like so insignificant, right? Like, oh no, we're that prophecy Daniel 8's not about the Jews. They're such insignificant people, and that's such an insignificant event. I know this guy Antiochus. It was one of the worst persecutions in Jewish history, but it was actually insignificant. Right, and the only reason I can think of it is I honestly think these people are very anti-Semitic. When anyone says something like that to me, like when you think about it, if you were a logical thinking person, let's go back to um, 168 through 164 BC, about the time frame this persecution happens. Was Judaism worldwide, or was it just in a small little place? Was most of the world like pagan and idolatrous? And was this like basically the only holy people? Right? And so whenever people go, "Oh, this is just a shadow fulfillment," or that this is there, or this wasn't fulfillment at all because they were such insignificant people. If you actually thought about this deeply, with a brain, with a heart, with some historical context, you would see that this is was quite brutal torture, and these people that refused to submit, I mean, it was pretty courageous. And also, these were the only people that had the sacred texts. These were the only people that were practicing the religion of God. And to have this Antiochus almost wipe them out is a pretty significant thing, because if you wipe out these people, that is a complete apocalypse. Like, this would seem so apocalyptic, because if you think about this, if, like, let's say the world gets a lot worse in 20 years from now, and all there is just this little pocket of people living in some little tiny state, and that's all there is, and you start to feel like the whole world's collapsing on you, because at this time, Antiochus Epiphanes, or Epiphanes, was like this major power. It was like one of the strongest powers in the world. And so, but let's put that into context of today, and think about if you felt like you were just in this, like all there was these group of Christians, and you were just in one little state, like let's say you were all in Florida or something, and then you felt like this army coming up against you, and you're the only holy. You would feel like this was very apocalyptic. So from this context, if you know, like, these people being all by themselves, I think this is an extraordinary thing. And when people downplay it and like, oh, it's some little insignificant event, what? And you think your little church, when there's other churches in the world, like if the Seventh-day Adventists got wiped out, it's not like you're going to wipe out Christianity, right? It's like you got Bibles all over the world and everything. It's like you're not going to wipe out Christianity by doing that. You wipe out these people, though. See, in comparison, this is a huge event. And that's why I just don't understand about people. And I honestly think they might not realize this, but when you say things like that, this comes off very like anti-Semitic to me, and very like you're just out of touch with reality. This isn't some small little event. So anyway, I had some more points I want to make. Try and remember, find them in my notes. Oh yeah. Here. This is a point I did want to bring up. The destruction of the temple in AD 70 was a consequence of Jewish rebellion. not a direct act of Rome seeking to trample the sanctuary. So think about this. When Antiochus Epiphanes encountered the Jews, what was his goal? He oppressed them so they couldn't circumcise their children. He would take and tie infants to their mothers, to around their mothers' necks, and kill them both. There was just completely like such brutal torture, done in order to intimidate them, so they wouldn't even dare go against them. Right? His goal was to wipe out Jewish religion completely. Now, when Rome attacked Jerusalem, was that to wipe them out? Were they attacking Jerusalem because they hated the Jews and hated their religion? No, it wasn't even the same thing. It's not even like their goal was and to attack them. Plus, the Romans had given the Jews protection for the longest time. It wasn't until the Jews got real rebellious and all that stuff that 70 AD happens, right? So it wasn't like Rome wasn't favorable to them. It's not like Rome was forcing them to do all these things. So for people to like point at Rome as fulfilling Daniel 8 more, it seems crazy to me. And I guess just I'm kind of thinking about these other points I wanted to address. I think one more point I would like to point out is when they gave their prophecy and they said, the Day of Atonement is in October 22nd of 1844. This Karaite calendar they're using is complete nonsense. Okay, there is I have yet to see an SDA church member provide me a Karaite that's living today that can affirm that, oh yeah, we kept a calendar where we, for a time being. I mean, at least for a time being. Maybe they're not keeping it now, but at least for a time being, where they will say, yeah, we used to keep Passover for a period of time where it was always in May, right? Because like the Seventh-day Adventist Church, their supposed Karaite calendar, which I just think is the most insane, ridiculous thing I've seen, says they would start the month of Nisan or Aviv in April 29th. Okay, so in 1843, this supposed Karaite calendar, they started Aviv on April 29th of 1843. Okay, so what this does is it forces you, I should probably bring up this one chart just so people got a reference of something. But what it does is it forces you to start the next month. Can you start the next? What if you see barley and it's like, oh wow, we can start Aviv at the new moon right after the equinox. What if that happens? Well, we pushed. Well, that last year we shoved it all the way into. We shoved Passover all the way into the middle of May. So now we have no choice but to have a 12-month calendar. So it doesn't matter what the barley is in March. We wasted a whole harvest. Oh, oopsie. It just sounds like a dumb calendar. It really does. Like, it sounds like someone did not think this through. And if there's proof that they were constantly celebrating this for a period of time that late, I would like to know. So I'm trying to get to it because I know I probably posted it up here somewhere. Yeah, this right here. So this is on my community post on YouTube. But if you look at this, so this was something done in from 1999 to 2014. And what we can see here now, this first year, this was in 1999. So it's got it April 18th. It's kind of weird. I got a little speculation here, but it's kind of odd that of all years, this is the first time they decide to do it, and they just happen to only spot it on April 18th. Very similar to how the SDA church, spotted, theirs. They had theirs on the 19th though, so it was one day later. But it's really weird, really weird. I mean, I almost I know this is a crazy conspiracy theory, but since they need this tie so bad to the Karaites, I always wonder if, like, did you guys fund them? Help fund these people or something to go look for it, and you're just like, Eric, could you try to have a April 18th harvest, Aviv? Try to start it out there just once, but it could just be that they just didn't even know what they were doing, since this was their first year doing it, right? So they just didn't know what to look for, because when you look at all the other years, the latest that they're starting it is April 8th. It's like the latest, and this one's almost 10 days later. It just looks a little suspicious to me. So I'm just throwing that observation out there. It's a bit suspicious, and I personally keep a calendar that this past year I had half the because I keep Passover on the 14th, but this year we had a fight, and it's like some people kept it. I think it was like like somewhere around the last day of March. I can't quite remember. I think it was about March. Oh, what was it? March 25th or something like that. They kept it. And I go by a calendar where we always use the first new moon after the vernal equinox. And I know there's an argument there. But see, I'm using one where it's always almost Passover's almost always in April, right? This Karaite calendar, you look how many Passovers they're having in March. I mean, they had 4 since they made this, 4 in March, and the other ones they're having in April. But all the ones they're having in April, we all agree with. The ones in March, I would disagree. I wouldn't have that there, because I just think that's too close to the vernal equinox. But I could be wrong. But see, that's what I'm saying. The problem with their calendar is, if you have pushed your Nicene all the way out to April 18th, you like this next year right here, they had no choice but to have it in April. But I would argue that they could have probably had it like on the last day of no, hold on. What would that have been? Probably like around the last day of March, maybe. I don't know. I have to kind of think about that a little bit. Oh, wait a minute. So they could have had it April 1st or April 2nd, something like that, for their Passover. So I that's why I have a lot of issues until I can see such a calendar where you can show, well, not such a calendar, show me just Karaites that will affirm, like, oh yeah, there was a period of time when we were having May Passovers. Like, because I just think it's ridiculous to have a Passover on like May 13th. It would really mess up your harvest. Nanya Biz says April 10th this year was our Aviv 1. Wow, that was considered late. Yeah. See, here's a guy who's Torah observant, Hebrew roots. He keeps Passover, and I know me and him have differences on this too. But I mean, this year we were agreeing, and he's like, yeah, we were told that this was late. We were getting, and and so could you imagine? We got flack for celebrating our Passover on the 24th of April. Could you only imagine if the kind of flack you would get for celebrating it on May 14th or May 13th? It's just, and it's like they didn't do it just one year, they did it year after year. And another funny thing about their calendar is when they present their calendar, they're not even showing a Karaite calendar. Like when Miller showed it for 1844, he's not even showing a Karaite calendar. He's showing a regular Jewish rabbinic calendar where he goes and adds the month of Adar to it. But no, if you guys were really had a Karaite calendar, you wouldn't have had Adar 2 on it. Your Adar 2 would have been in 1843. That's why you were having it so late. You wouldn't have a back-to-back Passover. I mean, a back-to-back leap year. And so when they show their calendar, and I mean, I'll show that. I'll bring up that Google now, because I mean, this to me was or Gmail. That's what it is. Because to me, this was ridiculous. I think I still got the notes. Oh, not that. Not that. Find it. Or did I put it down here? Sorry about this. Maybe it was here. No. Oh man, I'm pretty sure I had it here somewhere. But I had their calendar. Because I remember I did this video and I showed the notes. Could be back further. Oh, maybe this is it right here. Yep, here we go. So if you look at this is ridiculous, because this isn't even a Karaite calendar, but they just go and assert that it is. He just writes it on there, and this cannot be it. No, you guys, like, this is why I think they're such fraudsters. Because think about this: are you telling me in 1843, when you had when you had Nisan start on April 29th? Are you meaning to tell me? Oh, why can't I blow this up properly? I want to blow just this bottom part up. There we go. Now, are you telling me? Shoot. I wish I had a little bit better control of this. I want you to see this reading right up here, too. Here, let me take myself out of the picture. Get a little bit bigger. But, okay, so this is for 1844, you could see, right? So it's got Tebet, Sabbath, Adar, and Viadar. That's Adar 2. And then Nisan. Oh, wait a minute. You just had Adar 2 the year before. No Jewish calendar ever has back-to-back leap years. So what's going on here? I mean, I just feel like these people really don't know what they're doing and are kind of making things up. And that's why they can't ever find a Karaite that's going to agree with them. That's going to be like, oh yeah, I'll vouch for you. There was a period of time when we were having Nisan as late as, Passover as late as May in consecutive years. Yeah, there was a time we did that. I would think they would have some sort of documents or something for that, where they're consistently celebrating Nisan or starting Nisan on the second month after the vernal equinox. Just to be clear, because I had some Seventh-day Adventists like, where does it say in the Bible it starts in May? Where does it say? It's like, or where does it say it doesn't start in May, right? They do that stuff, and it's like, look, I'm saying May to give you a solar calendar reference to show you how far after the equinox you're celebrating it and how crazy that is, right? Because with the Gregorian calendar, it gives us a reference point, right? A reference point for how many days after the vernal equinox. And I'm showing you, okay, I'm speaking a little slow here so you make sure you understand this. I'm showing you that compared this Gregorian solar calendar, it normally has a spring equinox around the 18th through 20th, right? Almost every single year on the Gregorian calendar, it's always right about there. So if I'm like, hey, when is Passover ever in May? Well, what you do is you can figure out how many days from the vernal equinox that was and go, oh, yeah, that is weird that it's that many days from the vernal equinox. That was my point. Okay. And I don't know why you guys were getting stuck on like, where's May in it? Well, May isn't in it, okay? But I can read your documents and see where your boy Samuel Snow actually was looking at things like that and going, well, these rabbinic Jews only keep it in March and the Karaites keep it in April, and it's like, but that's not a very studious way of saying it. I mean, if you're just saying it in general. But then even on, if you're speaking like that, well, then why are you keeping it in May? But that's all I'm doing when I give this Gregorian calendar reference, it's so you understand that that's weird. It's really weird to have Passover that far past the vernal equinox. That's why I'm saying, show me where they're having it that far. That's why I say May. That way you got a reference point that you can understand how far away from the vernal equinox that is, okay? And that's it. And Jews don't do that. So that's how you know it's false. And then when it's like, oh, I mean, we know this wasn't and they go, according to the true biblical reckoning preserved by our Karaite Jews, but this isn't Karaite. No Karaite would have, no Karaite would have this in back-to-back years. Now down here, someone might be like, oh, 1843, Chris, wait a minute, that's 1843. Hold on. They're talking about where it started, okay, where it started in, because you can see that up here he's going the Gregorian year. So down here, which is just a Jewish year, but when he's saying 1843 and those previous documents, that they're referring to the Gregorian year. They're not, because this obviously they didn't have. If they had, obviously the month of Nisan wasn't started that late, or else if it was that year, it would be way past October 22nd. Because, like, as you can see on this calendar, they're just saying like the Jewish month that had previously started in in the year before in 1843 in here. And so right here they're still saying this whole thing is 1844. This is still back to back Jewish leap years. It's real messed up because it's a real messed up calendar. I mean, that's what it is, because you can see right here October 22nd, so it's obviously 1844. But they just got down here the Jewish sacred year, which started in 1843, and it's going to end in 1844. That's what they're saying. So just in case someone's a little confused by that, but it's really weird that you would have had in the previous Jewish year, you got a leap year that shoved Passover all the way this late. And so that's why I'm saying it's just a crazy calendar that just does not make sense. And right here is just further proof to me that they're just kind of pulling this. I mean, I guess, but see, you can't say this is the rabbinic calendar because the rabbinic calendar doesn't do this. So they're obviously, because in the rabbinic calendar there was no leap. There was they didn't add Adar to that year in 1844. So, because that's why the Seventh-day Adventists are having their Day of Atonement in October 22nd, and that's why the Jews did it in September 23rd. So, and I mean, to me, that's all you gotta do. If you think. So you notice, like, there's no Seventh-day Adventist in my channel. Like, oh, hey, look at this. Go look at this source, right? There is none. I saw Jason in here earlier. Oh yeah, that's Jason. Hey Jason. There were others before William Miller who believed the 2,300 prophecy was years. Well, here's the one problem too. I got a good question for you too. I know you might have left. I know. I just want to get through my main points. But here's a good question for Seventh-day Adventists. Show me someone prior to 1800, prior to the Millerite movement, who read this verse, right? Who read this question and said, "Oh yeah, it's referring to something before verse 9." Right? I want to see references of maybe one or two, 3 commentaries, someone commentating on this, just a quote going, yeah, we think this verse refers to something that happens before the large horn's broken. I bet you can't find anyone that's dating that goes, oh, this question is concerning things going on before the large horn's broken. I don't see anyone with any basic reading comprehension that reads that and says that. So yeah, there were some people that tried to say it's years. There's also some Jews that were saying it's 1,150 years, and we're trying to, but they weren't saying the whole prophecy. To me, I think some of them were, and there was just some of them that were looking for a so-called dual fulfillment, because basically they're denying the Messiah, so they're trying to figure out ways to reconcile Daniel 9 with this and try to combine it together, and then say, oh, also Daniel 11, and we're going to all these are combined, and they're all talking about the same thing, right? Because they didn't want to think they missed the Messiah or anything like that, so they're trying to figure out other ways to reconcile that, so they can hold on to this fact that they missed Jesus, but they didn't want to admit it. But there were plenty of there were Jews that definitely thought that was only a period of 1,150, right? So, and they calculated that because they were like evening mornings, right? So trying to see if I got. There was something. I will be doing Wednesday crucifixion video later, as I do have more proof. Because I know that's another sticking point with the Seventh-day Adventists, is that they happen to pick a year in AD 31 where the full moon is on a Wednesday night. Problem is, whenever Passover occurs, it's always on a full moon, right? So you'll have Passover, and that very night of Passover is a full moon. So a Jewish day goes from evening to morning, right? So the first day of unleavened bread, we see a new moon that day, right? Or the night of Passover, the night of the 14th of Nisan. So 2 days later, you're going to have a waning moon, and you can argue that the calculations may be off one day. I don't know of anyone that argues they're off 2 days though. And actually it's like those calculations are pretty good, but I can understand an argument for one day. So, grudgingly, until I can understand arguments more, if, like, let's say I redid my notes and I thought, the crucifixion could have happened in AD 30, I have to, until I can see stronger proof, since that could have happened on Thursday, but there's also some things about it to where the calculations, it could have been on a Friday, it could have been on a Wednesday, just because of where the the moon's at, from my understanding, where so it's like the degrees of it and everything like that. It's kind of hard to debate those specifics. At least I'm not that much of a math student where I can have an hour long debate on something, some little particular like that. So, but for me, to try to push it all the way to Friday, I think it's a little ridiculous when you should have had it, when it should have been Wednesday that year. And but hey, if it's a May Passover, oh no, it would be a Tuesday then. So that's another reason why it's kind of important that you understand how that calendar works, because you're really working against yourself and you're saying, oh, May Passover. So I need to bring up something else because there's another point I wanted to make. About this. I think this is it. Sorry, it's giving me a second. But but I will play any Seventh-day Adventist video if you comment on this and you can show me how that verse 13 in Daniel 8 is referring to anything that happens before the large horn's broken. Other than that, I think we got to say that 2300 must be referring to an event that happens afterwards. And explain to me linguistically how we're not comprehending this, right? Because I have went to random people and asked them, right, people who have no clue about Daniel 8. I'm just like, can you read this and just tell me whether you think this question refers to an event that happens before the large horn's broken or after? And I invite you, Seventh-day Adventists, let's just see. Just walk up to random people. Don't just get judgmental and be like, oh, they can't comprehend, because they're stupid and whatever. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves and say, if every single person who's reading this, even if they are they don't really know what all these other things like horns are and little horn and who's stars, and okay, at least admit that if these people read it and they basic reading comprehension says that question does not refer to anything before the large horn. So okay, I guess I gotta go soon because dinner's done. So I might try to do another video soon. Gosh, man, I really want to get to this other point, but I don't know if I'm gonna find it in time. I'm just going to kind of read through this, but I'm not sure if this is exactly what I wanted to find. The historical accounts of his reign from 175 to 164 BC describe a period of intense persecution aimed at the Jewish faith and practices. Antiochus IV, known as Epiphanes, sought to unify the empire through Hellenization, enforcing Greek culture and religion upon diverse populations under his rule. This led to the desecration of the Jewish temple, the outlawing of the Jewish religious practices, and imposition of Greek worship. Those who resisted faced brutal consequences, including death. Some things they faced was worse than death. I'd rather just be killed. But people got to remember, this was not merely a political struggle, but an existential threat to Judaism. It was an attempt to eradicate religious identity, which, if successful, could have altered the course of religious history significantly. These events during his reign were indeed apocalyptic for the Jewish people, had far-reaching implications for the world, as Judaism was the foundation for the subsequent emergence of Christianity. You got to think in a broader context how big this event is. Stop saying it's insignificant or not that significant. It's just some Jews. I really hate that, and it comes across to me as sounding so anti-Semitic. And let's see here, one other point. Yeah, I think I done cover that point. I want some scholar references to anyone who interpreted that question in 13. Okay, so as far as linking Daniel 9 to it, the 70 weeks in Daniel 9 are indeed significant, focusing on a period of probation for Israel, culminating in significant events, including the coming of Messiah. This prophecy has its own starting point, which is the decree to restore and build Jerusalem, right? So it doesn't necessarily, if we don't need Daniel 8 to figure out Daniel 9, and we don't need Daniel 9 to figure out Daniel 8. The only thing Daniel 9 does is tell us, because at the time there was no temple. So we see this vision of persecution in Daniel 8, but yet there's no temple right now. So there's no sanctuary. So now when Daniel sees this vision in Daniel 9, if you want to say, oh, now we got a time reference because we know there's going to be 70 weeks from Jerusalem being restored, 77, so 490 years from Jerusalem being restored to 78, to at least now a Jew at the time, they might be thinking that it gets destroyed as soon as that prophecy ends. If you're reading it, right? You might think, or maybe it happens, afterwards. I don't know, but you would basically know you at least got about 490 years that sanctuary is going to exist in. There's going to be a sanctuary because Jerusalem's going to be restored, which is the implication of sacrificial system being restored, which now means that prophecy in Daniel 8 can happen, right? Within that time period of having a sanctuary. So that would, to me, that should make someone focus more in that time period. And we know it can't be talking about Rome, because I know some people they have this way of, they want to say, well, that 6 years or almost 7-year period from 66 AD to 73 AD is what that prophecy in Daniel 8 is talking about. But Jerusalem never got restored, so you can't say it was some time period between 66 to 70 or 66 to 73 because it never got restored. So anyway, I'm going to have to end it because I didn't know I had to go soon. So I'm sorry about the abrupt ending. Sorry I didn't get to everyone's comments. Thank you for watching. Hope